In studio, Wanjuhi Njoroge is youth and nature consultant, Josephine Wanjiru, youth and gender activist, Anthony Buluma, the chief executive officer of the Kenya Young Parliamentarians Association, Shiko Kihika is the founder, Tribeless Youth in Kenya, and also with us is Shepeta Mathias Hezron, an official with Haki Africa that champions for equality, human rights and good governance. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now turn our attention to another pressing matter, and on the front pages of the publications this morning, one has this headline: how a farm bagged 1 billion Kenya shillings edible oil tender by email notification. And that is the story of Charma Holdings director Ruth Waithera Kinyanjui when she appeared before the Senate Standing Committee on Trade, Industrialization and Tourism in Bunge Tower. The committee is undertaking investigations into more than 16 billion Kenya shillings edible oil scandal, one of the major projects by the Kenya Kwanza administration to lessen the cost of living. But the edible oil turned out to have been one of the first major crises the administration faced when the CS at the time who led the docket was Moses Kuria, and how the Kenya National Trading Corporation, despite having the powers to directly procure the oil from either Malaysia or Indonesia, had managed to procure others, and the money that thereafter was swindled the taxpayer, money amounting to 16.5 billion. That's what the Senate committee is looking into. And this week, ladies and gentlemen, the former Prime Minister announced his disengagement from local politics. Tuesday next week, the President will be officially unveiling Odinga as Kenya's candidate. On Wednesday, President Ruto, then 24 hours later, will be heading to the counties of Migori, Homa Bay, Siaya and Kisumu in what the papers report as dangling the development carrot, and also, I'm sure it will come up, the aspect of pushing Odinga's candidature for the continental assignment. Anthony, coming to you on this, and given the circumstances that we are in and Odinga's omnipresence in Kenya's politics ever since multipartyism, who are the perfect replacement in terms of oversight and keeping the government under the pressure cooker here? Are the Gen Zs, Kenya's young population, the perfect replacement?
I think Ayub, first is just to appreciate the journey Honorable Raila has covered over the years. I mean, many of us have grown admiring his stature and place in the Kenyan political leadership space. So him almost suggesting that he's hanging the boots, for me, is a fairly great relief, because I think over the years, I think he's been getting the hits and misses. Sometimes he's getting it right, sometimes he's not getting it right. But over consistently, he's been actually the amplifying voice for many Kenyans who felt oppressed. And him coming to say that he's at a place where now he is almost exiting the political scene, I think as we reflect on his exit, the fundamental question would be, what kind of a replacement are we looking at? Mm-hmm. Is it a more audacious replacement? And I think from where I sit, and going by the recent events, including the Gen Z protest, I think Raila is probably has understood that a good dancer knows when to exit the stage. And I think he's at that place right now. The Gen Zs made it clear that you fought your time. Now is our time to also secure our country. And the replacement will not be automatic. And I feel like it is not in his place to anoint who comes after him, but for Kenyans themselves to embrace a new type of leadership. I don't think we are in short of great leaders, even just judging by the conversations we are having on this panel. You can actually see that the next leadership would be more informed, would be more engaged, would be more accountable, and most importantly, I think Raila Odinga should actually be asking himself, have I raised a greater leader than myself, or did I frustrate the opportunity for greater leaders to emerge?
Has he?
And, by his recent actions, I can't really give a very accurate answer, but I think it's for Kenyans to judge. Yeah. But the reality is that Kenya is not in short of leaders. As much as I know the clarion call for Gen Z has been leaderless, but I think leaderless has been to basically make sure that the issues are ahead of positions. Because in the previous case, it has always been who is in office. But now, what are the issues? That is the question the Gen Zs have been asking. And so I feel like already there are quite a number of outspoken young people that are coming out. quite very forcefully and properly articulating the real issues of Kenyans. And I think the replacement of Raila will largely be informed by the ability of Kenyans, and particularly those with interest in leadership, to better articulate the problems that bedevil Kenya. You know, in my reflections and the consultation with many young people, the impression has always been our problem has never been just leadership. Okay. It has also been institutional, in the sense that are we empowering the systems to work better than the leaders? So that whether it's Ayub, who's the president of Kenya, or Buka, or Josephine, or myself, are we able to predict Kenya irrespective of who is in office? So that now, if you have a DPP, are they doing or performing their functions in a manner that reflects the will and intentions of Kenyans? So I think one of the key legacies that, in my reflections about Raila Odinga, and probably as we think of who is going to replace him, his clarion call has always been, how do we strengthen the institutions of governance? His recent actions, kidogo, hazija reflect sana, because I think the Kenyans had expectations that as he plans to exit the dance floor, he should exit with the energy, the level of conviction that he's always stood for. We wish him the very best. I think we take a lot of pride that there's an opportunity for Kenyan to be the AU chair. Okay. I think that's something that all of us should actually be proud of.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, and Justin, coming to you. Exit Odinga, enter who?
Well, I'd like, first of all, to say, and I think I've always said this, that Honorable Raila Odinga has run for presidency ever since before I was born. So then he's been in the political scene probably ever since my mother was, like, you know, small like this. So he has experience that I do not think anybody in Kenya will ever garner, because he's had experience of Kenya being a baby, of an independent baby, up to 60 years that it is right now. So first of all, what I do is I just wish him the best in his bid in the African Union, because I know that he will take all the wisdom that he has garnered. And you know, he's done so much for the political scene in Kenya that I just hope he takes all that experience to the African Union, and I wish him the best. And I do not think that there's anybody who can replace Honorable Raila Odinga. I think what just his political party will do is just to enhance his leadership and make sure that the legacy that he's put will not die. So the question of being replaced, I don't think he's a person who will ever be replaced, considering his experience and what he's done for the country. What I just hope is that the people he's left behind are people who will just enhance and grow the democracy of the country, because he's taken the country from a zero to where it is now, especially democratically. So replacing, no. And enhancing, probably, yeah.
And is it then, if you look at it from this perspective and angle, Shiko, coming to you, at least 4 of the ODM party members are in cabinet today. John Badi, very critical docket, the National Treasury. Wycliffe Ambetsa Oparanya, who will be leading the MSME. You also have Opiyo Wandayi, the energy sector, and Hassan Ali Joho, who will be leading the Blue Economy Front. Strategically, it seems President William Ruto has placed the 4 key Odinga players in the line of fire. If it succeeds, it will be a campaign card that President William Ruto will be throwing around saying, we worked. If it doesn't, then he says, I incorporated them, they failed. All the same, it seems that he has given, as he goes to the continental assignment, for the continental assignment subject to the elections, that he has given the current administration some form of political insurance.
Well, one, I think, is to start by saying Ruto knows how to play his cards. And at this point, that's why he's really focusing on the Nyanza area for his campaigns, because he's been campaigning ever since he got into power. So this is also a campaign card for me. And the one thing that he's doing is, we have a lot of homecoming now from these 4 newly appointed CSs. So everybody's going back home to get prayed for, or rather for Thanksgiving. And the president is with them. So what does this mean? He's trying to also show show these people that, okay, this is now my broad-based government. I am incorporating everyone, but it's a political card. Unfortunately for me, and I say this because I think most of us, like Buluma said, grew up looking at Raila as, all right, you are actually speaking and filling the gap for that person who does not have the voice to be heard, or rather that person who on a normal day would not be listened to. And then coming to recent times, it seems like the ODM did not look so democratic as we hoped and as we looked at it as. So just looking at what everything is doing is, are we going to succeed? Maybe it's too early to speak, but I don't think we're going anywhere, because it seems they did not listen to actual issues. And our politics is always same monkeys, different forests. Now all the monkeys are in the same forest. So the question is, will the monkeys be too greedy to eat everything? Or are they going to remain anything for the common person? Because we have seen the way, even the reaction, I think the funniest thing was yesterday, Joho saying in Mombasa for familiarization tour. And I'm like, you've been a governor in that place for a whole 10 years. What are you going to familiarize yourself with? So you can already tell this is about power and not actual action. This is also saying, how well do these people... The whole cabinet secretary vetting was a mockery to our time, to our people, to taxpayers, and to the goal of the uprising. And for those 3 months that we saw young people in the streets, and to all those young people, and I keep repeating, those who were killed, they were mocked on that day. Because for someone to say, I am 20 billion rich, and this now becomes, this is what we are basing on, if you're capable of running this cabinet, then it only means that for a common Kenyan, you have no place in our politics and in our governance system. Unfortunately, the man himself, the enigma himself, bowed to the pressure of corruption. So him going to AU and whatever is happening, I honestly hope he gets it. If he does, I do not think he's best suited for that. It's time he rests. It's time he says, you know what, I have diluted my legacy in the fight that I put in. And just maybe to build on it, because Josephine said something, Raila Odinga is not irreplaceable. We have great minds that can replace him. We have great minds that can actually take up that beat, and also not forgetting the betrayal that he's caused Kenyans again and again that we don't talk about. So it's time we get a genuine person who is able to run this and say, you know what, it's not about having Kenyan in the AU. It's a Kenyan in the AU is about having principles and people who can work for the people genuinely.
Shepeta, have the goals of the Gen Z protests been realized, looking at it from the perspective that more or less this is now a regrouping of Kenya's political class, and the danger we have seen when they do so in the previous administration of President Uhuru Kenyatta and the former Prime Minister in the handshake context?
Yeah, thank you. I think we were protesting, some of us were arrested, but those who benefited from this protests are actually politicians. And just to say about Raila Odinga's exit, I feel I wish him well, but I feel sorry for the members of parliament who are always depending on Raila to get them re-elected. I come from a region in Coast in Mombasa, where many MPs who have been elected are actually from ODM, not basically on the agenda that they will do for the people, but just to say who will become the president is Raila Amolo Odinga. When they get to the podium, the first statement they say is electing Raila Amolo Odinga to presidency, but yet Raila doesn't win, but many of them win their positions to be in parliament, and they forget about the struggle, and they end up just benefiting from the name of Raila Odinga. I think now it's a good time to be able to elect the right leaders, not just depending on the name of Raila Odinga. As he exits to AU, we wish him well, and we are looking forward, because Raila is going as one, but many Raila Odingas will be coming in. You've seen for the first time that we can be able to bring people to Uhuru Park, and the crowd can be bigger even than the crowds that ODM has been having or Raila has been having. So this tells you of the power that Kenyans have. we've always depended on Odinga.
Yeah.
Now the Gen Zs have actually been able to show that they can also be accountable, that they can fight for their rights instead of waiting for politicians to actually help them. So that's the situation as we speak. Things are really changing. But lastly to say is that if you look at Raila of yesteryears and Raila of today, I think there's a total difference of the way Raila was before and the way Raila is. And many are disappointed with the Raila of today, but we are happy that we're actually wishing him well, because he has been able to be in the struggle. That consistent has been there, and we've seen the benefits that he's been able to have in this country. And I think it's time now a good dancer must leave the stage and allow more other players to come in. Yes.
Let's now talk the stage, Boka, and the stage is now Kenya. And Kenyans demand a working education system, proper health care, good infrastructure. And yes, he has hinted at disengagement from local politics, but young Kenyans have achieved what he did not in some instances, and that is the forcing of the government to concede on the finance bill, and with the withdrawal of the 2024 finance bill. Are young Kenyans then now taking up the baton and in a different style now, calling on the government from an informative perspective that we want ABCD done, we know here's what the law says, and these are the outcomes. If you can't do this, then we're going to exercise our constitutional right. And do you agree with Lee Njiru, who formerly advised President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, who was with Jeff Koinange here on Wednesday, that this is just a lull before another storm by young Kenyans?
First of all, it's important when we look at the current political happenings in our country is to praise the Gen Z and, of course, some of us that have been in this street for a long time. In fact, we are the happiest people at the moment, that at the very first time, the Kenyan people are taking their future in their own hands. And kudos to Gen Z. And then the second thing I wanted to say is that people look at how President William Samoei Ruto, and now joined by Raila, has reacted to this national crisis. But I think these are very cunning politicians. They are very deceptive, and they disrespect Kenyan people. In fact, Raila is like a scavenger, a vulture, eating on top of the poor, dead bodies of the Kenyan people. And he's very shameless about it, because he has done it so many times that now he's soulless. Yes. So the old man is walking around stepping on dead people. And he sees it as, his only card to make it to the AU. After all, African Union is a captured institution by the imperialist interest. In fact, the United States, Japan, and other imperialist countries push more funding to the African Union, which is basically a club to defend corrupt presidents in Africa. This is what Raila Odinga is going to defend. A bigger corruption at continental level, while he has made sure that he sealed the coffins of dead, poor children of the working class and the poor people in this country. So he's a man that we should really be humiliated about, ashamed to the core. In fact, Raila Odinga continues to step on Jaramogi Oginga Odinga's legacy, while his father built a credible, slate. Raila has continued to cut deals by criminals in this country. 2007, what happened with Raila Odinga? The Sirikali and Sumkate, he has been the beneficiary of the blood that has been shed in the streets of Nairobi. Nobody should say that if you come out to fight for democracy, and the very democracy you step on, this is the guy that we must deal with first. In fact, we should hold him responsible for all his actions. But for William Samoei Ruto, he's taking us old to the old politics. This tribal tour that is going to take place in Luo Nyanza is nothing but to continue to alienate what they are calling the Luo people from the national project. In fact, Raila Odinga is going to do tribal mobilization in Luo land to tell them that for the first time the Luos are in the treasury. He's going to tell them that for the first time the Luos are in government, and thanks to the people who have died. So Raila Odinga and William Ruto is taking us several decades behind to actually open the wounds of tribal politics, because every time election has been held. People have died on useless tribal wars. Now they are mobilizing us over homecoming in Luo Nyanza to remind the Luo community that for the first time, William Samoei Ruto is putting in government. That's for me is just someone who has always been possessed by power. And now that he cannot get it and he cannot appoint one of his sons to take over, he does not believe that young people can get out of the country and say that for the first time, we are opposing this government based on certain issues. What were the Gen Z people demanding? That this broad-based coalition, in fact, it's not broad-based coalition government. This is a government of minority or billionaire class that have come together to defend their own interests as billionaires. They have no interest around the national project of the Kenyan people. Look at William Samoei Ruto. In the last so many demands that the Gen Z people made, he decided that he's going to appoint Joho, for example. Joho has been the governor for 10 years. Oparanya has been the governor for 10 years. These people are not clean people. They are just coming to his scheming to be re-elected in the next election instead of actually addressing the problems that is facing this country. If you look at that, I sympathize with him. This guy who is now at the CS for Treasury in Mbadi. The first time we have been rejecting IMF and World Bank, and then he gets into the office, and who does he meet the following day? The IMF criminals. So these guys are not serious. That is why we are saying season 2 is coming. Okay. Which will sweep them off.
When is season 2 coming?
Season 2 is starting on Katiba Day. Yes, on 27th.
That will be 14 years exactly since the promulgation. Wanjohi, if you look at the front pages as well, because this is a governance-related matter, the Senate committee in relation to this is investigating 16.5 billion edible oils scandal. Now, the interesting bit is that the person who appeared before the committee, the director of Charma Holdings, Ruth Waithera Kinyanjui, she said, "We bagged 1 billion Kenya shillings edible oil tender after an email request from Kenya National Trading Corporation officer." Isn't this what then funds the questions for more accountability and more answers from the government as to how scandal of such magnitude can happen in the eyes of state officials and agencies that ought to be safeguarding the public coffers?
You know, what amuses me is that yesterday, I think the CS Treasury was here.
Well, with my colleague Sam.
And he said that they don't have the resources to fund JSS teachers. And then you see 16.5 billion was lost. I promise you no one will be brought to book. The other day, we lost 15 billion in e-citizen. It could not be accounted for. I mean, we are losing money in a very interesting way in this country. Yesterday, the people, the matatus on Ngong Road blocked the road because of corruption. You know, police are not even hiding anymore. I think I saw the video. They are collecting bribes in broad daylight, and they don't care. Because corruption is not being punished. And the question I asked myself, so this lady receives an email asking her to supply a tender of 1.1 billion. She never applied for it, but she went ahead and supplied. She went ahead and participated in that tender that broke all the procurement rules in this country. I mean, as an entrepreneur, I wouldn't even dare because I risk losing my money because I will not be paid because I did not follow the right procedure. And this also goes to show you that the rot is on both sides. We, as Kenyans, have contributed to this level of corruption. Corruption does not happen in a vacuum. Because the minute I receive an email like that, I will not participate. The next question I will ask, I never applied for this. So why are you awarding me this tender? But this is hogwash. They're just playing with our minds. This is a waste of taxpayers' money. This particular committee is receiving allowances to sit down and, quote unquote, carry out these investigations. But what will happen after that? Nothing will happen. Corruption is not punished. And I long for the day, because the day is coming when we'll have leadership that will go after all this money that is lost. All these people, and I hope they will land in the worst of prisons in this country. And then we will reclaim every resource they have stolen from Kenyans. Allow me to quickly talk about the Odinga bid. I personally have respected Raila for many years, especially his fight for multi-party democracy. He has been burnt many times, and I think he has a very forgiving heart, or maybe because he benefits from being burnt in other ways. But the question that keeps coming to my mind is, what happens if he doesn't win the AU bid, which is a possibility? He's not the only candidate. What happens if he doesn't win? Does that mean that he leaves?
Ambassador Amina Mohammed lost in the last time.
Yeah, you know, she lost, and she was a strong candidate.
To him.
So if he loses, does it mean he's still going to exit the dance floor? And I think you asked a question and asked whether we have achieved anything with the demonstrations. I want to promise you that we achieved a lot. Today, those demonstrations reminded us of our power as a people. Parliament has betrayed Kenyans. And I think this is a wake-up call for all of us, that our constitution allows us to vie as party candidates, but it also gives us the mandate and the ability to vie as independent candidates. And we need as many leaders, as many members of parliament in the opposition as we possibly can. And my appeal to Kenyans is, let us look at leaders as individuals, because the people who ought to be playing the oversight role should not be young people. It should actually be parliament. All these laws that we are discussing here, for instance, the university funding model, it was passed in Parliament. It was discussed in Parliament. These are the people who should be stopping these things, but they are not stopping them. The finance bill that took us to the streets, which is another win for Kenyans, was discussed in Parliament. We reached out to these members of Parliament, but they refused to listen to us. But these demonstrations have come to remind us that we have a very powerful constitution that will be marking 14 years since it passed. And that is the only document, that's the only thing that protects us as Kenyans. And we need to strengthen it. We need to continuously educate ourselves. We are seeing young people now engaging in civic education. We are seeing young people agitating on Twitter and social media. My county, of Nyeri County, was conducting what is it called? A session on X to discuss the budget. This tells you that we may not have achieved everything we wanted, but we have made progress we would not have made without the demonstrations. And we must continue. The other thing that we must do, and the other places that we must occupy, is Nyayo House. Today, I'm using my second generation ID. I see nothing wrong with that ID. I don't know why we are forcing ourselves to move to the third generation, yet we don't have the ability. Where are we wasting resources, yet we are saying we cannot employ JSS teachers because we don't have the money? Why are we investing in useless things that we don't need? So the thing, and that's the thing, in fact, you shouldn't be whispering. It is because every decision that is made in this country is informed by how much am I as a leader going to make from this particular deal. So if we change to third generation, there is money to be made in the purchase of this new machine, which is such a pathetic way of thinking. So the next place, the next noise that we must make is on IDs, because come the next election in 2027 or wherever it will be, we must be ready for it. We must have registered.
All right.
And for us to register, we need to have our IDs.
Anthony, then the last time a regrouping of such scale happened between President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga in 2018, we had seen one major assignment that they had undertaken, which was the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020, the BBI, which the court said this was no ordinary amendment process, but a dismemberment of Katiba 2010. And the courts further went ahead and said, in their judgments from the High Court to the Court of Appeal and to the Supreme Court, that there will be no bypassing of this constitution without consequences. And this was a warning to the political class. How dangerous is it, if you look at it from that perspective of what appears to be now the broad-based government, which the president hinted at, incorporated 4 ODM members, and now Odinga appearing to be in support of that, despite denying that he's in government?
I think, as they say, Ayub, there is nothing new under the sun. I mean, we have lived this country. We have seen after every election is always an opportunity for reorganization in the political space. But I think the fundamental question would be, is this reorganization beneficial for Kenyans or for the individuals who are occupying these spaces? And I think in the current context, I honestly feel, to the best of my heart, that it was not really done in good faith, especially in response to the Gen Z's protest. Because, one, I think the anticipation or the expectations were a reorganization not based on the previous political arrangement, but a paradigm shift in terms of the outlook of government, you know. I think what Kenyans really wanted to see was a government that is more inclusive, with faces of more young people occupying leadership. And I think you asked a very fundamental question about who is going to occupy the space Raila has been dominating for all those decades. And that space will never be occupied if young people are not given an opportunity to actually serve in government. One of the reasons why many young people are in the streets is because many a times they are not on the negotiating table. They are always on the menu, being discussed as a by the way. And I think that this was one of those opportunities that government had to reorganize and bring a more broad-based within the context of bringing the many faces of Kenyans that has been missing in government. Because Ayub, in a country where over 70% of the population are young people, but when you come to the percentage in terms of governance structure, that's a small fraction of this 70% represented. I'll give you an example to put context. In Parliament, I think right now below 40, and the association I lead comprises those young parliamentarians, we only have 53 against a parliament of over 340 Kenyans. Is it reflective of the population in this country?
Okay.
But as we reflect on that, Ayub, the fundamental question still boils back to us, the Kenyans. How do we make our decisions during elections? Do we make it purely based on our political needs or our political affiliation? The case has always been, like my brother pointed out, that it makes it very easy in the previous arrangements. If you vie on a party affiliated to Raila, all you just need to do, I was a candidate, Ayub, by the last election. And what I witnessed was that every time anybody, especially in a stronghold affiliated with either Raila or William, the only thing a candidate would do is when they go to the voters, they say, how many here are voting for Raila? Watu wa baba wako happy? And then when people cheer, they say, okay, hata mimi niko hiyo camp. And they have stopped at that. So we've been operating in a space where people are not articulating their ideologies, their thinking, their manifestos, but articulating the names of individuals. So I'm hoping that even as we move towards the next election, and the fact that there is a reorganization in government, it just presents an opportunity for us young people to come back to our senses and ask ourselves, are we ready for more youthful leaders? Are we ready for more inclusive leadership? Because yes, the political structure as is today has reorganized themselves and created a broad-based arrangement for themselves.
All right.
But can we also as young people conspire to create our own broad-based leadership, you know, that encompasses young people who have never been in spaces of leadership? And I think, Ayub, we must clap for those who are doing well, but we must also demand for accountability for those who are missing out on doing what is right for Kenya.
Okay.
And Ayub, very quickly.
Yes.
I think
let me go to Shiko because
just 1 minute. Just to add on that, it will be interesting to see how Mount Kenya politicians will campaign without Raila, because they always say we cannot. That's the manifesto. You know, he is the enemy and he's the target. And once you oppose him, that's how you're elected. So I'm very keen to see what will happen in the next election without Raila.
You're talking about the immediate casualties of Odinga's exit from Kenya's politics. Shiko, Anthony talks about young people serving in government and the opportunity to be given. Why not form that government? 8 million young Kenyans did not vote in 2022.
They've always repeated that.
Because mathematically, this is very practical. Let's do it here. And the beauty about it is that our current constitution is so transformative and so eloquent that we know when we are going to vote in the next elections. We know that we are going to be heading to the polls. 8 million young Kenyans didn't register. If they register, mathematically that then takes them over even what, respectively, President William Ruto and Odinga garnered in the last elections. You are the founder of the Tribalist Youth Movement. Why not find a common voice? Get yourselves registered. Mobilize as you have done when you took to the streets and even breached Parliament for the first time, which never happened in the history of this country, and brought the country to a standstill, unprecedented achievement. Why not then coalesce yourself around one cause? Get registered, get votes, form the next government. It's very practical mathematically if you look at it on paper.
As practical as it is, if we were really a democratic country, do you know we would have gone back to elections, because 8 million is not just a number, it's more than 50 plus 1. So Ruto did not garner 50 plus 1. Let's be very real with ourselves. So he's there illegitimately.
Well, the IBC numbers say otherwise.
But this is the thing. IBC still gave us the 8 million people who did not vote.
It's a choice that they didn't.
Because
how do they?
Why do I have
the voices of those who
But why do I have to settle to the lesser God or the lesser evil? Why do you have to look at, oh, okay, I'm going to vote for this one because it's not as corrupt as the other one? Why must I settle for that as a Kenyan? We call ourselves a democratic country, right? Then let us be democratic, actually, not on paper. So I'm going to come back to the country we have right now. We must wake up to the fact that the Kenya we had before June 25th, 2024, is not the Kenya we have right now. This means we have a more engaging country, we have a more engaging citizenry, and we have Kenyans who are asking every day, when are our IDs coming out? When are we going to actually have a fully set IEBC so that we can do registration drives? Because we want to be sure we are voting. But this government is intentionally not reconstituting IEBC so that Kenyans don't have enough time to register as voters. So what they'll do is 6 months towards election is when we're having everything going. So that, again, we close out on people, as usual. So that, again, we do not give IEBC enough budgets to run registrations during that time. So it's very deliberate. So young people want to form the government. Young people want to be part of the systems. But we are not going to be part of the sewer systems we have. We need to be part of cleaner systems that are formed by the actual people, not the thieves that we have in power right now. And why I say this is because when the uprising happened, immediately after Occupy Parliament, the president came after his arrogance. Then the next speech he said was, you know what, in 3 days we'll have IEBC reconstituted. How many months down has he talked about it? He's not.
Lies too much.
You understand? Like, lie is his next name. Like, literally, it's William Samoei the liar. Full stop. Because every time he addresses people, he has to lie again and again. And so what we are seeing right now is we're in court, and we had to file the case in Malindi law courts. Why? Because we need IEBC reconstituted. This government has been in power for 2 years. Since Wafula Chebukati left, was given whatever he was given, and the wife was given a position, we forgot that IEBC needed to exist. The boundaries are supposed to be demarcated.
Reviewed.
How far are we with that? And how is that going to happen if IEBC is not reconstituted?
The Attorney General has sought an advisory opinion from the Supreme Court regarding that, because we are past that time, pending by-elections, because of the failure to reconstitute that, and the IEBC sought, the advisory opinion from the Supreme Court. But here, when you talk about the reconstitution of the IEBC, is this not then the challenge and the failure where the political class fails on such a very momentous exercise, even if when Odinga is supportive of the government, there seems to be no appetite, and therefore, don't you question the role of Parliament in it?
Of course, we don't.
Our Parliament is illegitimate.
Oh God.
So what are we questioning from people who can't think and can't reason? We are in a position where, let's just be honest, even Raila was quiet because he was waiting for this NADCO thing that was going to incorporate him in government. This is BBI 2.0.
Okay, and we know what happened to BBI 2.1.
So when people say no to the first BBI, so now we reintroduce BBI in the name of NADCO, and we have to do these weird things that we called public participation that were not public participations, so that we give legitimacy to BBI.
Okay.
Now we are here, you're telling us, oh, we need now to change the constitution so that we have more people in power, and then now we can constitute IEBC. And the madness in whatever they're trying to do that does not make sense. I think it's time for them to realize that Kenyans are woke enough, and we're not changing our constitution, by the way. Let me just say, no to NADCO, no to NADCO. Okay. We will reject it.
Thank you. Yes, under Article 210, embolden citizenry accountability, the place of transparency and public participation. Is that what's driving today's governance agenda? And how do you think this is proving to be very important in the governance discourse in our country?
First of all, let me just use my right to reply, because I think I've been an object of attack from Shiko. I don't know. I woke up on the wrong side of her dream.
No, it's a lot of privilege.
By the way, let me just say, I do not come from a privileged background. That is a very political statement. Okay. I am raised by a single mother, proudly, and I have been sponsored by the government for most of my life. And I thank God for where I've come. And this is the kind of stories that the current government is looking for. From grass to citizen media. That is a story of grace. And I thank God for that. I do not come from a privileged background. I have just set myself up for now. And I thank God, because what has set me up until now is even education, as we talked about it. So poverty is the enemy, not right now whether I come from a rich background or not. And it's okay even to come from a privileged background. It's also okay to come from an unprivileged background. I just accept where I came from, excuse me. I'm also right to respond to what Shiko said, saying that I said Raila is replaceable, and I said he's irreplaceable, and she said she is. I didn't mean that there's no leader to come from the opposition. What I meant is that, you know, funny enough, you know, Raila uses the Canaan ideology, and if you're for those people to give context in what Canaan is in the Christian concept, is a promised land by the Israelites, and Moses was supposed to lead people to the promised land, but because of what he did on the way, God decided to let them show the Israelites the promised land, but somebody else to take them. And it's so interesting that it's coming to this context, because now Raila was able to show people the promised land. We have seen it, we can taste it. The promised land is a place where we have justice, fairness, equity. He has shown it to us, but I'm not saying that there is no Joshua to take us now to the promised land. And that's why I'm saying his place in taking us from where we came from up to seeing it is irreplaceable. But somebody will come, even if it's from this panel, Ayub. We have a country that is full of young people, smart people. We are people we've been educated by free education, and I'm thankful for that. We have people who have sober minds, and as Anthony said, you know, people who have an independent. We need to have people an independency of thoughts, such that we have a panel like this that can come together. As much as we have disagreements, we put our opinions together and see, you have said this, which is not right. I have said this, which is not right. Let's come together and push the country forward. That is broad-based. And we have so many people, even in KYPA, where Buluma sits, who can drive this country forward. Those are the Joshuas we need. And we thank God for Honorable Raila, who was our Moses. That's what I was saying.
A question. Why then will, say, for example, President William Ruto, who has the mandate of the people, need Raila Odinga or broad-based framework to drive the country forward? Why not just get the competent people who can serve the country?
Yeah, we're not
get Justin, get Anthony, get Booker, former cabinet.
You know, funny thing. The demonstrations right now were majorly faceless, leaderless, especially leaderless and faceless. Those are the two key words, right? And, you know, I was even hearing some of my panelists saying that, I think it was Shiko, sorry, no, Shiko, now you're my reader. Saying that the student leaders were taken to see the State House, and it was not for, you know, our needs, but it was for brown envelopes. But here's the thing: if you're faceless and leaderless, we are faceless and leaderless in voicing our opinions, and that's absolutely great, because what I think is not what Wanjohi thinks, and it's okay to listen to her, and it's okay as well to listen to me, right? It's fair enough, right? But now when we come to the discussions on what Wanjohi and Justin has said, we cannot table 1,000, 1 million plus tweets that were, you know, even reject finance bill was 1 million plus tweets, almost 2 million. We can't table them all. We want somebody who has been listening on the ground to come and table them to the people who actually make decisions, because even the young people were very straightforward in saying, we do not want the seats. In fact, the person who was the most active voice, and you can quote me on that, Kasmu Makur, was the most active voice, and came here and said, and even went to K24 and said, I did not want a cabinet secretary seat. I just wanted my voice to be heard. Fine. You do not want to take up the positions of leadership, but you also want your voices to be heard. Let's take maybe student leaders. You know, these are people that students have elected to represent them in their institutions. So if we do not want to be in the government ourselves, we do not want to be given the cabinet secretary seat, We do not want to be on the table.
All right.
Then what will the president do in order to incorporate us as leadership, to give us the opportunity to occupy the parliament, to give us leadership? Yet when we're given the opportunity, we do not take it up. I can tell you that if a young person wants to lead, and even Buluma,
dangerous narrative.
they can, and this government is willing to give people to be in the leadership talks, to be in the National Assembly, to talk about these things. I know even Shiko has been in the National Assembly talking about and challenging some bills and acts, and that's all fair and good. But when we are leading a demonstration and we are changing the face of the democracy in the country, we should also be willing to give ourselves up for leadership.
But you agree with me that you don't need to incorporate the opposition to run a government?
Exactly.
Yes, it's not the only thing. The thing is, and Buluma said it. Yes, and Buluma said it. You know, broad-based government is just not opposition. It's incorporating all the faces of Kenya.
Okay,
and that includes,
just when I'm making, to be fair to you and to be fair to the others as well, is at the onset, Gachagua described our country as a shareholder, where I'm more privileged, for example, than you, Justin, which is not the case, because we're all equal before the law and under the law. And then you had the president who had disbanded his cabinet and formed what he termed as broad-based government. Instead of, say, getting the 4 ODM members, Kenya has a pool of competent professionals who have successful curriculum vitae across the world. Was it not even necessary to just get the people who get the work done? The competent ones who are not corrupt, who show no opulence. And we have them. It isn't that we lack them, but do you think it was right then to incorporate the opposition in the context of broad-based to run a government? Let
me tell you something. The definition of a broad-based government is not exclusive of the opposition, but it's not exclusive of other things, of technocrats, as you said. There should have been an inclusivity of, competent opposition, competent young people, competent different religion kind of leaders, Muslim and Christian and Indian, all those people who are part of our country. That is the definition of a broad-based. As much as they focused only on opposition, it is not exclusive of that. And there's no constitution. The constitution does not say we do not allow, somebody like the 4 ODM members who came, it does not disband them from coming there. If they put themselves on
correct.
It doesn't
constitutional.
Because
they
withdrew safeguards that talk about integrity, good values to be incorporated, or to be given
and the role of opposition as
especially that, which has been weakened, in fact killed completely in Parliament.
First of all, the logic just sends me crazy. First of all, that the president we are dealing with breaks all the constitutions that he claims to have installed him in the office and then claim to be our president. First of all, William Samoei Ruto getting into parliament to compromise parliament in terms of issuing bribes to parliamentarians.
But we have no issue of that.
His main people that went to the State House to receive 2 million shillings to pass, an IMF-backed finance bill have come out on public media to actually say clearly that we went to State House to be bribed. So this is not just anything we are now talking about. It is a reality. So this is one man that breached the constitution.
You make your point. As you proceed, we have no evidence of bribes that were issued.
We have a direct admission from people who are members of parliament. We have no reason to doubt when somebody says, I went to State House and I was given 2 million bob and now I regret it.
Who was that MP?
In fact, around, if you look at 3 members of parliament from, mainly from Mount Kenya, who are actually facing mob lynching in their place. I don't know if it's right for me to say on this TV. But the idea is that the president, even before this mongrel he called before he became the president, the president himself.
Who is mongrel? I mean,
the president is the one who says that this government of Uhuru Kenyatta is a mongrel. Okay. We don't know who we have brought in and who. Now he has formed a new mongrel who he cannot see. But
okay, let's get it clear. I mean, we need to be very objective about our language. These are national media. You mean mongrel of the government, that broad-based government he formed, or the person, the president?
No, not the person, the president.
So I won't allow you to make suggestions.
Let me tell you, when he was
let me finish my show.
Okay.
Because I won't allow you to make statements that are unfair to any party that has no right of reply here, whether it's the president or whether it's any other person. So therefore, to get it clear, you meant Mongrel in terms of the broad-based entity he formed, or Mongrel, the person of the president?
No. The Mongrel I mean particularly is the figurative speech that the deputy president then, William Samoei Ruto, used to describe Uhuru Kenyatta welcoming Raila Odinga into his government. That is the term he used at that time. Because what he was actually gearing towards that you cannot differentiate now opposition and government. That means opposition and government has produced something that, he cannot figure it out within the constitution. Now, the same opposition that he has welcomed into the government. Now, when we are looking at opposition to oversight the president at the moment, who did the Kenyans elect as the opposition? Because he has actually incorporated in the government. So it basically means that if we look at the main political outfits, we don't know which political outfit is in opposition and which one is government. That is the justification of the term.
We have not defined opposition in the constitution. We have the majority and the minority side.
And minority...
Parliament, okay, Buka, to get it right,
yes,
because we have to be fair to all parties, even as we have this discussion on how to better our country. We have the majority and we have the minority sides of Parliament. Parliament is therefore the house where we have all sent our representatives to go and oversight the government, make legislation and represent the Kenyan people. Then are we talking about a wholesale failure of Parliament in checking over the executive, which is headed by the president?
Actually, the current parliament, in its own constitution, in its own character, does not represent the wishes of the people. Because we have seen that most of these bills that have been rejected by the majority of the Kenyan people have actually been passed in parliament. Even the IMF, the IMF-backed Finance Bill 2024, that basically was rejected by the majority of the people in Kenya, this bill was passed in parliament. So it basically means that the parliamentarians are alienated. They're out of touch with the realities of the Kenyan people. But the point that I wanted also to push is the logic that the current movement in the street, it was tribeless and it was basically leaderless and partyless, must be understood clearly, because it didn't mean, for example, that the people had surrendered their heritage, their traditions. Basically, the young people were just rejecting the use of tribal mobilization to divide a people along tribal lines to be dominated by a few. So to that extent, the young people are reminding the Kenyan people that those politicians who want to divide us along tribal lines, for that very reason, we are tribeless. And also they were saying that we do not want to be incorporated in this corrupt government. It's not that we do not want to be part of government. Because anybody who is going to be incorporated, let us say Kasmuel had accepted to be incorporated in this corrupt government, the same day he was incorporated in the corrupt government, people will reject it. So we are saying that we do not want to be incorporated in a government that has been indicted by the people. And that is why we are saying if Ruto has to go, it has to be replaced by a government that is pro-people. So I'm just debunking your logic that the young people did not want to be incorporated. In fact, the people who have been welcomed to the State House do not represent the interest of the majority of the Kenyan people. These are privileged few people who just want to advance their own political interests. Now, when they say they are also partyless, it's not a matter that the young people do not want to join political parties. They are only saying that these political parties that currently have taken political power continue to auction their future. So the young people are demanding for political parties that are more accountable.
Thank you. Well noted. Yes, Chipeta, before we sample the feedback.
Let me say this. I think, first, it's illegal for the opposition leaders to have actually joined government. And if you look at it, even if you look at Joe and Oparanya, these people have been governors, they have been members of parliament with almost 2 terms. They could have waited, and 2027 was not really far. Joe had an ambition of becoming a president, which has now been killed. I really sympathize with the governor, former governor, because he was campaigning in Mombasa saying that he wants to run for presidency. But if you look at this now, is that the president has actually killed all the kingpins. Mombasa kingpin was probably Hassan Joe. They've been able to get him into government, so they've killed his ambition, or they will kill his ambition of becoming president. So I think the president is playing a political game whereby he's trying to weaken anyone who would run against him in 2027. And the opposition leaders are buying into all this play because they could have resisted the temptation. A governor like Joe worth 2.4 billion. I mean, you have all the money, you have all the luxuries you've had. Just wait for the next coming election and you feel you're good enough and you have the capabilities to lead this country and get into government in the right way. There is no shortcut into... So what I'm saying is 2027 will be a different ballgame. There's a paradigm shift. Many Kenyans are not looking at opposition leaders or politically elected leaders to actually be fronted in the next government. I would look at the Gen Z movement politically, if we can be able to reorganize ourselves, that we can have a movement that will be able to give platform to young and new leaders who would actually be elected. We need to change Parliament in totality to be able to bring the reforms that we actually want.
Thank you. Let's sample the feedback when you're here, and then I'll give you brief 30 minutes closing remarks, all of you here on the set. Here's what you're saying on Citizen Daybreak. That is the hashtag at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. This one, first one from Eric Waiwaren, says free education beneficiaries now pushing punitive university funding. Irony or corruption?
Corruption.
Kelly Care says much as we are concerned about external forces pushing bad tax regimes, there seems to be such forces to deny Kenyans good education. Looking through many attempts to reorganize university access, it paints an intellectual dark future. Olum Justice says budgeted corruption, MCAs, MPs, governors, and etc. given bursaries, and their proxies are openly selling bursaries and using it as a campaign tool. The CDF and the NGAV should be channeled to make university education completely free. Sanixon Dugire says the foundation of every powerful state is the education of its youth. So dear government, stop gambling with today's youth education, because in doing so you are creating a nation that's hopelessness. Gabi Wakasiaka says new higher education funding model needs to be relooked into. Majority of us comrades will graduate with huge loans and more than 1 million in an economy where securing employment is not guaranteed. Esawe says Raila stepping back from local politics, Kenyans are left vulnerable and without a crucial voice to channel the government excesses. Raila has always been the people's watchdog, holding power accountable. Ordinary Kenyans will bear the brunt as the elite feast. Peter Gesura 89 says when Raila Odinga leaves local politics and joins the AUC race, it means that in Kenya we have no strong opposition to keep government of the day on track. In any democratic country, there must be a strong opposition. So sad, he says, that is subject to winning the AUC position. So starting with you, Anthony, 30 seconds, your closing remarks.
I think, Ayub, as we reflect on the misses in our country, it's always important to remind ourselves that we have only one country, we have only one constitution that we all must be proud of and rally around. Most importantly, all our actions or omissions must be geared towards consolidating a unified country. So we must shun from anything that will divide this country to an extent that we can lose our own country. I applaud the efforts by the Gen Zs, but equally urge our young people to embrace the culture of constitutionalism, as well as defend the right of everyone to say what they feel and how they feel. But most importantly, as we reflect on the exit of Raila Odinga, we must always be reminded, and this is my philosophy of leadership, Ayub, that the greatest leader is one who raises a greater leader than themselves. Kenya has that opportunity to raise greater leaders than the ones we have witnessed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Chico.
Well, there's a lot to say, but in a nutshell, it's just to say young people are not shy from occupying power and being in power. But if you pour a jar of clean water in a sewer, the water that comes at the end will not be clean water. Our systems are sewers, and we must clean the sewer before we get young people into leadership.
Chipeta.
My closing remarks would be 60 Kenyans have died, hundreds are still disappeared. There is no police officer who died or any of them who disappeared. What we are asking for is accountability. let IPOA investigate these cases.
Thank you.
And bring all those who are accountable for the murder and the disappearance of Kenyans be brought to book.
Thank you. Josephine?
My closing remarks would be the enemy is still in play. We still, as much as we demand accountability and, we defeat corruption, let us, as young people, put ourselves forward in these positions of leadership, because once we are involved in the legislative procedures, as much as we are educating ourselves civically, as young people, we need to project ourselves and push ourselves such that we do not, as Shiko said, have just two people running and we choose the lesser evil. Let us just have all of us, if you're competent enough, put yourself in a position of leadership and bring yourself forward. We will support you as all young people of Kenya.
Yes, Enjoy.
It's a lack of trust in public institutions that has taken people to the streets. And for it was betrayal for the president to go and pick opposition from parliament and make them CSs. Because now if John Bandi were to table the finance bill, will it be opposed? Will they listen to the voices of the people? Okay. Second, it's unfortunate that young people are still being abducted all these days later, which continuously erodes our faith and trust in this administration. And we demand the immediate release of all those people who are still missing from...
Thank you.
My last comment could be that we have lost some of the finest patriots, some of the finest sons and daughters. Some of the finest, our sons and daughters in this country in the uprising, the Gen Z uprising. So we'll continue to give them dignity. And to give them dignity is to continue to suffocate the enemies of the Kenyan people. And the enemies of the Kenyan people now are well defined. They are both in the opposition and they are also in government. These are the same corrupt billionaire class that continue to hijack our processes. These are the people that we must reconsolidate the young people to punish. And the punishment will not come only in 2027.
Thank you.
The season 2 is starting on 27th, and we will meet these criminals in the street.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Much appreciated, and thank you for your time. Anthony Buluma is the Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya Young Parliamentarians Association. Good morning. Anthony Shiko Kieka, founder Tribeless Youth. Thank you. Shipeta Hezron, an officer with Haki Africa. Thank you. Buka Mole, National Vice Chairperson of the Communist Party of Kenya. Thank you. Wanjohi Njoroge, Youth and Nature Consultant. Thank you. And Josephine Wanjiru, Youth and Gender Activist. Thank you for your time as well, and the accounts that you have given us here on the broadcast. And thanks to you for waking up with us on the feedback on X, which was at Citizen TV Kenya, the hashtag Citizen TV Daybreak. And many thanks for your company here. We'll see you next week here on the broadcast. Till then, good morning.